Guys, Dr. Mike Israetel here today to talk to you about MRV. Seems like every other day I talk about MRV. All my friends have left me because all I talk about is MRV. My family has abandoned me. It's all MRV all the time. But lucky for you, the path continues. So here's the deal. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard a lot about the concept. And today we're going to talk about some related terms to the MRV concept, because there's a lot on MRV already, but MRV itself, it turns out, is really kind of more of a guidepost. And there are a couple of other very related concepts which I'm just now introducing to the community that are also very important. And one of them is particularly important. It's more important than MRV, but only through a knowledge of MRV and the others can we even elucidate this other very important concept. So just to refresh your memory, MRV stands for maximum recoverable volume. It is the most volume you can train with in any unit of time. Usually we use the week as an easy proxy, and still recover, which means get back to your earlier state of preparedness. We measure that in hypertrophy training by a reclamation of repetition strength. So if you can bench 225 for a set of 10 maximum, then next week, after a certain amount of volume on your chest, shoulders, and triceps, if you're so beat up that you can only bench it for 8, then you have exceeded that week's maximum recoverable volume. On the other hand, if you can bench it for at least 10 reps, then you are within your maximum recoverable volume, or at it. And so that's how that notion is defined. So the MRV is the maximum recoverable volume, the most you can recover from. It's a really good number to know, because we know for a fact a couple of things as soon as we get to MRV. Training above your MRV consistently is rock stupid, because why the hell would you train with more than you can recover from? I mean, that's insane. Remember, adaptation in the body is an expensive metabolic process, and if recovery hasn't been occurred yet, adaptation is not really going to occur much at all under normal circumstances. So in order to make gains, you had better be at least recovering. So if you train with such volumes that are beyond your ability to even recover from, it's stupid, and you're not only going to not grow muscle over the long term, but you're also going to experience a variety of very unfortunate overreaching and overtraining symptoms, which include injury and burnout psychologically and a bunch of other stuff you really, really don't want. So we know for a fact that training consistently above our MRV is a bad idea. So if we know what our MRV is, or if we're familiar with the existence of such a concept, we know for sure going above our MRV on a regular basis is really stupid. We also know that going way below your MRV on a regular basis also isn't the right idea. Because look, if we can recover from more and adapt to more training, then why not do more? So let's say you take a really crazy assumption that one set per body part per week is what you're going to train with. So you're over at the gym, you warm up, and you're about to do your one set of chest per week. Could be all the way to crazy super failure with your buddies helping you lift the weight. And you do your one set per week and feel pretty good about yourself, and you move on to your next muscle group to train. And someone asks you, hey, how come you don't do 2 sets per week? What are you going to tell them? You're going to say, well, one set works for me. And they're going to say, can't you do another set and still benefit even more? And you could say, well, I don't know. But the answer is, well, if you can recover from it, and if, especially if you're not even close to pushing your recovery limits, doing more will get you better, right? So you can't really have an answer to that. Shit, yeah, I guess 2 would work. And then they say, why don't you do 4 sets? And up until they get to some number that you think you really can't recover from, if they say, why don't you do 50 sets? You say, I just never recover from 50 sets a week. That's insane. But yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8 sets per week. Everyone can recover from that just fine and not even bat an eye. Shouldn't you be doing that much volume? And the answer to that is correct. So MRV gives us a really cool guidepost of saying, okay, much higher than MRV consistently is stupid because we can't even recover. There's no way we're going to adapt. And much lower than MRV consistently is stupid because, geez, we could be doing more and benefiting from it. Now that we have MRV kind of squared away, we have to look at another concept called the MV, or the maintenance volume. Okay, so basically Maintenance volume is kind of the amount of, we use volume sets per week as a proxy, that it takes for you to maintain your gains. This is important to know because there are various times you'll go through what are called maintenance phases in hypertrophy training to let your body heal, relax, resensitize itself for growth. You definitely don't want to lose muscle during this time, and it's a month or two at a time. But you so you definitely don't want to lose muscle. On the other hand, you want to make sure that you're not training a ton during this time because it's the very low volume environment that we want. So knowing your maintenance volume is how many sets per week per body part it takes to keep your muscle size on. That means you don't make any gains, but you don't lose anything. And it's very important because we want the maintenance, so we want the volume on maintenance phases to be as low as possible, but still not lose any muscle, which is exactly the maintenance volume. That's the volume you're going to find yourself close to when you do maintenance phases to make sure that you can resensitize your gains. If we start moving up in volume above maintenance volume, pretty soon, sometimes right away, we get to what's called the minimum effective volume. Okay. So MEV, minimum effective volume, is the lowest amount of work, sets per week you can do in the gym, that actually gets you any results. We know the maintenance volume is not high enough to be at. You can train at maintenance volume if you're really at your maintenance volume for 3, 4, 5 years, and you literally won't get any better. Why? Because it's just enough volume to maintain. If you go higher than that, at some point you'll hit your MEV, minimum effective volume. That's the least you can do and still progress. Now, that should not be a goal in your training to hit, because if that's your goal, you're literally saying your goal is to progress as slowly as possible. My God, sounds a little masochistic. That's really stupid. We don't want slow progress. We want the fastest progress, or at least good pace progress. So MEV isn't a goal, but I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is a great place to start our mesocycles, okay? Because we're faced with a conundrum, and here it is. We can't train at our MRV all the time because we don't make any room for adaptation in that. As soon as you start training at your MRV, you accumulate a crap load of fatigue, and then you have to take a deload because you literally have completely expended your recovery capacity. You're at that recovery capacity in week 1. So if our MRV for a body part is 20 sets per week, we do not start a mesocycle at 20 sets per week. Now you could say, okay, we need to make room for adaptation. So there's recovery, then there's how much room we need for adaptation, and then so up till that, that's really good stuff. So why don't, let's say we need 2 sets cut off of our MRV, and that'll be how much adaptation, how much room we need from recovery to actually make adaptations as well. So now we have recovery, we have adaptation, and then we can train up to full recovery and adaptation. Well, so that's 18 sets per week, let's say. Okay, how are you going to train 18 sets per week and still get overload going? So week 1, 18 sets per week. Great. Okay, we're getting really good stimulus, and we're not on MRV yet. Week 2, well, we got to increase the volume week to week to week if we're going to get a lot of hypertrophy, because volume is a huge stimulator of hypertrophy. We have to provide overload. So if it's 18 sets in week 1, what do we do in week 2? 20 sets, MRV. But then we're at our MRV. We got to deload the next week. Well, that doesn't make any damn sense. So what are we going to do? Deload every other week, or every 3 weeks? For every 3 week split, we deload 1 week. I mean, that's insane. We lose a third of the training year deloading instead of making progress. So the reality of the matter is, we can't just start right under MRV and just click, and we've just cut ourselves off. But if we start way too low in our mesocycle, like at our maintenance volume, well, then the first week is like really wasted. You're just maintaining. So we definitely don't want to start the mesocycle at maintenance volume. We definitely don't want to start it really close to MRV because it just cuts us off. Both are bad. And we also know that we can't just do the same number of sets every single week because we need overload to occur. So then how do you design your mesocycles? It's actually pretty easy. You go from your MEV, your minimum effective volume, and then every week you add some sets until over the course of 4 to 6 weeks on average, you reach your MRV or just above it. You deload, change exercises or sets of reps or something like that, or just deload your weights and then come back. And then you repeat that slow climb. It's that slow climb that we grow from as much as just doing that much work. And I'm going to say that again to be very clear. Overload, okay, is a 2-part definition. One is making stuff hard, which anything between your MEV and MRV is good. but it's also not just hard training, but making the training harder over time. So that we know our MRV is as hard as we can ever go. We know our MEV is as least hard as we can go and still get gains. So every mesocycle, more or less, should start at around MEV, right? And end up at MRV 4 to 6 weeks later, deload. That's it. The average set numbers between MEV and MRV is going to be what we've defined theoretically as MAV, maximum adaptive volume. Okay, MAV, maximum adaptive volume, is the average amount of sets per week that gives you your best adaptation. But remember, you can't have that as a goal. It's a resultant definition. It's a resultant aspect of a process that goes from point A to point B. Okay, a really stupid analogy that I just came up with is this. You don't go to a party with the purpose, with the goal of having fun. Because what the hell does that even mean? Okay, you're at the party and someone's like, okay, have fun, go. You're like, you don't try to have fun. What do you do at a party? You go with the purpose of hang out with friends, making jokes, maybe imbibing various alcoholic substances, etc. The process of dancing to music, hanging out with friends, and drinking alcohol or something like that, all of those things are things you do. The result is that you have a ton of fun. But if your goal is to have fun and you show up and you're like, fun, let's have it. Where do I start? That doesn't work like that. So maximum adaptive volume, you can't just shoot. Let's say it's 16 sets a week, or since MEV is 10 sets, okay, or 12 sets, MEV. Our MRV in this example is 20 sets, and at 16 is our average MAV. Well, let me ask you this. If we start right at 16 sets a week, that's my MAV. Dr. Israetel said that was my maximum adaptive volume. That's the volume I should always train at. So 16 sets a week on week 1. And then you go, what's my MAV? 16 sets a week. You do it on week 2, 16, 16, 16. What have we violated? We violated one part of the overload principle. That makes sense? So basically what ends up happening is, we started at a maximum adaptive volume, so that first week was great. But then the week after, it wasn't as great because we already adapted to some extent. We need more overload. So a much better version is to go from 14, 16, 18, then deload, right? That makes much more sense. Our average is still 16, so we're getting average great growth, and we're making room for overload. And in reality, especially in most circumstances, so now we have what's called a 4-to-1 accumulation to deload paradigm. 3-to-1 accumulation to deload paradigm. We have 14, 16, 18 sets per week. That's 3 weeks, and then we take one down week. So 1/4 of the year, we're not really making any gains. We're just deloading. Well, not terrible, not great. If your MEV, minimum effective volume, is actually 12 sets per week, and your MRV is actually 20 sets per week, maybe you can go like this: 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 5 accumulation, and then deload. Or even 20, and then 22, and then deload. 6-to-1. So if you could run a 5-to-1 and 6-to-1 and still not accumulate so much fatigue that the whole process becomes purposeless, then what you've done is you've created more growth throughout the whole year because you're not deloading all the time. And remember, deloads occur pretty much at maintenance volume, right? So you don't grow from deloads, they just reduce fatigue. So the reality is, by making sure that you are on average going under and then over your MAV, right? You go from your MEV to your MRV, that's where the growth is. And it's not about trying to hit that maximum adaptive volume. It's by applying overload to train around it. You go from below it to above it, deload. Below it to above it, deload. Below it to above it, deload. That way, you get the part of the overload that means you're doing enough work, on average of maybe 16 sets a week. And in addition, you get to go from 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and thus you supply that volume overload that's really, really critical to the process. So that's kind of a grand tour of those terms. Luckily, we have a bunch of articles. One of them was already released and it's on the internet. Precisely. That article also tells you how to find your own MEVs and MVs and all of those terms. Some of it's a laborious process, but it's 100% worth it. If you're already tracking your training, you might as well track that stuff to get a real good understanding so you can answer the question to yourself of, how much should I train? Because the answer to that question should be a definitive range of numbers so that you can know that you're not training too much. you can know that you're training about the right amount, so you can be very confident that you're getting the right kind of hypertrophy and you're doing your best, right? In addition to those numbers that we have for you in those definitions, for every week for the next, I think, 8 weeks or something, I've written a really big article series. I already have all the articles written. They're in my secret data bank on Mars or something like that. Nick keeps all our servers on Mars and some crazy RP stuff I don't know anything about. So it's already written, and it's going to be an article about every single muscle group, main muscle group in the body, and my perception of what the best exercises on there, video links with those exercises, MV, MEV, MAV, and MRV averages that I think most people can use for those exercises, and a bunch of stuff on variation, periodization, etc. Those guides will be coming out. So watch this video. We'll do a Q&A on Facebook in a couple of days about this video if you guys have any questions. And then after that, we're going to be putting those articles out. I think you guys are getting a really, really huge kick out of them. And lastly, if this stuff is awesome and you think the theoreticals are great, but you looked at designing your own training and you've got, like, you know, a bunch of stuff going on, you got wife or kids or work, school, etc., and you're like, man, I just kind of wish there was a structure to this that I could look at. Male physique or female physique templates are literally designed on every single one of these, and they auto find your MRV for you and your MAV. So those are really, really good. And if you want to buy one of those, that's great. If you want to build your own training off these ideas, that's also super. So check all that stuff out. Those articles are going to start coming in soon. And I'll make a post on my Facebook, and Nick will share it to the Renaissance Periodization, the clients group page, about when the Q&A in my page will be about this video. We're going to post this video. It's going to be up for you to see forever and ever. And hopefully you got something out of this talk. Dr. Mike Israetel, signing out. I'll see you guys on the flip side. How long was that, Nick?